welcome to Fantasia, home of the Melodious. My name's Azallea, and today, gonna be bringing you guys an update to my Melodious deck. Now, before we begin, I have a couple of announcements to make. First of all, doing some big updates to my channel. I'm gonna be changing the intro, if you haven't noticed already. Gonna be changing my banner and a lot of various things on my channel. Gonna be adding thumbnails. Gonna be changing the overall design and layout of my channel, so hopefully it'll be easier to find some of my videos and they'll be better organized. Second of all, the ban list is right around the corner and I don't know when it'll be released, so hopefully it doesn't get released like a week after I make this video, because that would suck. But do keep in mind that once the ban list does get released, I will definitely be making an update to this deck, but that will happen sometime, maybe in the middle of August. So without further ado, let's just get right into this. First of all, we are playing the very standard lineup of 3 copies of Arya, the Melodious Diva. Now, Arya, the Melodious Diva, when she is special summoned, allows us to protect our Melodious monsters from battle or from targeting effects, which is very useful in today's meta, especially against things like Cosmos and such, and Burning Abyss, who all target with their effects. So next off, we are playing 3 copies of Soprano, the Melodious Songstress. Soprano allows us to go into our fusion monsters, and she is one of the few monsters in our deck that allows us to go plus. So when she is special summoned, you can target one Melodious monster in your graveyard and add it back to your hand. And this basically allows us to recover resources and go for more combos. Now, her primary effect is to be able to allow us to fusion summon when she's on the field, which allows us to go into our extra deck for our fusions. And this build is more based on the fusion monsters in the extra deck, so that is why we need 3 of her. Next off, we are playing 3 copies of Sonata, the Melodious Diva. Now, Sonata, if you control another Melodious monster, you can special summon her straight from your hand, and when she is special summoned, she gives all of our fairy-type monsters 500 attack and defense. So she allows us to go for very big offensive pushes and get over bigger monsters, but she is also very good with Soprano because she allows us to have enough monsters and on the field, gives us really quick field presence to allow us to go into a fusion summon, which is very, very useful. Now, with only 3 targets for Soprano, that wasn't enough, so I bumped Cannon up to 2 copies. We're playing 2 copies of Cannon, the Melodious Diva. She has the same effect as Sonata, where if we control another Melodious monster, we can special summon her straight from our hand. But you can only special summon her once per turn this way, which kind of sucks, but she does allow us to go into rank 4s, and she does allow Arya, if we open up with her, we can normal summon Arya, special Cannon, and overlay into rank 4s and things like that. Next off, we are playing 1 copy of Tam Tam, the Melodious Diva. Now, Tam Tam, when she is special summoned, while we control another Melodious monster, we can add a polymerization from our deck or our graveyard back to our hand. So she allows us to basically search our polymerizations and go for more fusion plays outside of just having Soprano. And she's really useful in that regard, but I only play 1 because you really don't want to draw into her, you'd rather have her in the deck. So next of all, we are playing the last Melodious monster of the deck, Score, the Melodious Diva. She basically acts as an Honest, and when our Melodious monster battles another monster, you can make that opponent's monster's attack and defense become 0. Speaking of Honest, though, we play 2 copies of Honest, which allows us to basically attack over any major threat. He's also level 4 if you really need to go into rank 4 plays, but that is really rare. Okay, next of all, we're going to the non-Melodious monsters. So we play 2 copies of Summoner Monk. This is the reason why we want Tam Tam in the deck, because Summoner Monk can bring her out, and then she can search a polymerization. Now, the cool interaction with Summoner Monk and Tam Tam is you can discard a polymerization with Summoner Monk, special summon Tam Tam, and grab that polymerization back from your graveyard and add it back to your hand. So that is a very neat interaction where you don't really lose any resources at all. You actually go +1 with it. And yeah, so that is definitely something to look out for. If you do have the chance. Summoner Monk can also special summon Honest from the deck, and you can return Honest to your hand to push for damage, or you can special summon Soprano. Soprano can add something back, and then you can go off from there. He's also very good for making rank 4s, so definitely use him for that as well. He also allows us to get rid of dead spell cards in our hand, like first movement solos if we already have monsters, so that is very good. A lot of synergy with the deck. Next off, we were playing 2 copies of Max C. Decided to put Max C back in because I believe that special summoning will be pretty big in the next format, especially with Blue Eyes coming out now. Since the movie pack just got released, people were playing alternatives and everything like that. They really want to try to set up a field, because if Blue Eyes don't really set up a field, they're not really threatening. So you really want to challenge them with the Max C and make them, you know, either pass their turn and let you summon your Shabbertas, or basically pass, or basically make a field and then give you a bunch of cards, and then you'll make Shabbertas. So that's it for the monster lineup. Next off, we're going into the spell cards. So first of all, spell cards, the very staple bread and butter of the deck. First movement solo. If we control no monsters, we can special summon a level 4 lower Melodious monster straight from our deck. Allows us to get quick field presence, and you're normally summoning Aria or Soprano off of this. Next off, we are playing 3 copies of Polymerization. Like I said, this is a very fusion-centric build, so I really want to see Polymerization as fast as possible. Tam Tam can't search it, so that's another cool thing. But another thing is, if it's dead in your hand, always pitch it for Summoner Monk. It is like the best spell to pitch for Summoner Monk, because you can get it back with Tam Tam pretty easily. And speaking of recovering resources with Tam Tam and such, we have Fusion Recovery, which allows us to add 1 Polymerization and a fusion material monster that we use for a fusion summon from our graveyard back to our hand. So that is really good for just managing resources. It's very good to top deck late game. So that's why I'm only playing 1. I don't really want to see it early game because it's really dead in my hand most of the time. And speaking of techs, I play 1 copy of Defusion. So Defusion allows us to just target a fusion monster, return to the extra deck, and special summon the fusion materials. This card is actually really good with Bloom Prima, which is why I play 1 copy of Bloom Prima in the extra deck. So really good interactions with her, because Bloom Prima can attack twice, then you can defuse her into Shabberta and whatever else you use to summon her, and then push for even more damage. So that is very, very good interactions and can lead to an OTK. Alright, so next off, we are playing 2 copies of Photon Lead. Now, Photon Lead just allows us to special summon 1 level 4 lower light monster from our hand to the field in attack mode. Now, I usually use this for Soprano and Tam Tam just to summon them and trigger their effects, but you can also use it, you know, to summon an Aria if you really need an Aria on the field and such. So yeah, and in the battle phase, when you're attacking, you can special summon an extra monster from your hand and push for that extra damage. Or if you don't have enough monsters to go for an overlay or something, you can definitely special 1 out of your hand and go for a rank 4 that way. Although it is not really advised because it is a -1. So next off, we are playing 2 copies of Mystical Space Typhoon just for some standard spell and trap removal. And we were playing 1 copy of Upstart Goblin for the consistency and draws. Okay, next off, we were playing 1 copy of Instant Fusion just to get Norden, pay 1,000 life points for a free rank 4, Utopia the Lightning. So, yeah, that is very good in that regard. 1 copy of Soul Charge just for recovery plays, and last but not least, 1 copy of Raigeki to destroy everything our opponent controls and ruin their day. So, there's a lot of spell cards, which is why I am running 2 copies of Summoner Monk, so there is that. So next off, we are going into the trap cards. We are playing the standard 3 copies of Powerful Rebirth. This is basically a Better Call the Haunted, because if Powerful Rebirth gets destroyed, our monster gets to stay on the field. So it's really good if they Twin Twister MST our background, we chain this and bring back an Aria or something, and get to keep her. So your opponent basically goes minus trying to get rid of it. Next off, we are playing 1 copy of Vanity's Emptiness, because I believe this will be a very strong card in the upcoming format, especially because of things like Blue Eyes, where if you can stop them from making anything, you know, they're just going to have like their tuners on the field and they're really low attack. You can just run over them for a ton of damage. Yeah, so definitely recommend running Vanity's Emptiness. And decks like Metaphosis are going to be coming out as well. So Metaphos are a new pendulum archetype, and they're very strong, and they can really like just swarm the field really quickly. So if they have their pendulum scales up, you can flip this, and hopefully, you know, just hope they don't have a Twin Twister and MST, and normally they won't be able to do anything much outside of that. Okay, and next of all, last but not least, we play 1 copy of Solemn Warning, just because it is pretty standard and staple in almost every deck, basically. All right. So that is it for the main deck. Next off, we're going into the side deck. Alright, so starting off with our side deck, we are playing 2 copies of Skyscourge Imbecile. Decided to put Skyscourge Imbecile back because of things like Metaphors and their pendulum scales that really need their effects to go off to be able to establish anything. And it also stops Blue Eyes from using their power spells. It stops Monarchs from using all of their spells. And so it's just a really good Floodgate monster for cards that really rely on spell cards. And it's a really cheap alternative to things like Anti-Spell Fragrance and things. So definitely recommend running and trying it out. Okay, next off, we were running 1 copy of Twin Twisters just to get rid of the extra back row and things. It also helps against the pendulum scales for Metamorphosis and decks that will be coming out because of that. 2 copies of System Down. I believe System Down is really good against things like Cosmos, obviously, and I decided to run System Down over Imperial Iron Wall just because the fact that I can continue to banish things with Shabber, which is very nice. Having a 3k beat stick against Cosmos really does help the match against that matchup. Okay, so last off for the last 2 spells, we play 2 copies of Magic Planter. Probably wondering why you're playing Magic Planter in your side deck. Well, if you watch my previous deck profile, you'll know that I play a lot of Floodgates, and Magic Planter does help get rid of ones that are dead. I sided them this time because I'm siding all the Floodgates from last time instead of maining them. So going to the trap cards, we were playing 2 copies of Storming Mirror Force. The reason I'm playing this is because we can actually get a lot of field presence, but most of the time we have trouble getting over larger fields, so this is just really good for clearing your opponent's field and then being able to push on your turn, especially against pendulum decks where they kind of just go off and then they don't really have anything to follow up after their huge pendulum summon. So if they attack into you and you return everything back to the hand, they're in kind of a predicament because they normally don't have any hand traps that like stop the battle phase, like Battle Fader, Swift Scarecrow, and such. So if you can just return everything and then swing for game next turn, that is completely fine. Next off, going to the Floodgates, we were playing 3 copies of Rivalry of Warlords. Rivalry of Warlords will not be as good once Monarchs get hit, so this is really only here just because Monarchs are still around, the ban list hasn't dropped yet. So 3 copies of Rivalry, and last but not least, 3 copies of Mistake. And this is probably going to be the best Floodgate that I'm going to be playing, just because it stops everybody, because nobody can search, and this deck doesn't really search as much. I think this deck, the only searchers are really Tam Tam, so I would probably side out like Tam Tam and a couple of other things to put in Mistakes, just so that we get to play around it, but the opponent won't be expecting this. So there is that, and that is it for the side deck. Next off, we're going to go into the extra deck. Alright, so for the extra deck, starting off with 1 copy of Abyss Dweller, again, just to stop all the graveyard effects, and he can also get the 500 attack boost if you use Norden to summon him, because Norden is a water attribute. Next off, we were playing 1 copy of Daigustal Emerald. This is really only to recycle extra deck monsters late game, if the game goes on for that long, so normally just put Utopia Lightning back, and then swing for a ton of damage to end the game. Next off, we are playing 1 copy of Bujinte Tsukuyomi. She allows us to go +1 off of her effect. If you keep 1 card in your hand and you discard it, anything you don't need, dead spells, a dead monster you can't normal summon, use her effect and then draw 2 more cards, and she hopefully allows you to draw into more of your trap cards, more of your spell cards that allow you to enable more combos or defensive plays. Next off, we are running 1 copy of Fairy Cheergirl. Just allows us to draw cards, and if she stays on the field, which your opponent really shouldn't want you to have, she'll allow you to draw even more cards on the next turn. Keep in mind that she also requires 2 level 4 fairies, so Norden is a fairy, so you can instant fusion into a Fairy Cheergirl for some pluses. Next off, we are running 1 copy of Castel the Skyblaster Musketeer. Basically just spins any problem card, really good for getting rid of field spells and other continuous threats, especially things like pendulum scales and such. Next off, we are running 1 copy of Dark Rebellion XYZ Dragon, and Dark Rebellion is only really here because I don't like things like Majesty's Fiend, so he allows us to have an out to Majesty's Fiend because he's 100 attack more, and he doesn't make us waste our Utopia and Utopia the Lightning on that. So he basically just acts as a beat stick, and if your opponent plays a deck that revolves around big monsters, Dark Rebellion just becomes this huge threat to them if they can't get rid of him. They don't have any spot removal on hand, so definitely really good card to be running. And I'm not running things like Ragnar Zero and stuff because I'm not main decking Rivalry Warlords, so there's that. So that's it for the XYZ monsters. Next up, we're going to go into the fusion monsters, starting off with one copy of Elder Entity Norden. Now, Norden is obviously, as you know, the instant fusion target, and he allows us to go into immediate rank 4 plays. Next off, we were running one copy of Bloom Prima the Melodious Choir. Bloom Prima is really only here because she is very strong with Defusion combo. And although it doesn't happen often, it is very, very funny and satisfying when it does. So, yeah, definitely run one copy of her. I wouldn't run more just because you rarely ever want to summon her over Bloom Diva. So we're running 2 copies of Bloom Diva, the Melodious Choir. Running 2 copies now instead of 1 like before because this build has so many ways to fusion summon, Polymerization, Soprano, and such that we really can use the second Bloom Diva. You can actually establish 2 Bloom Divas on your field, although not recommended, but you can. And it's also nice to have a second copy just in case it gets banished by things like Cosmojo and such. So there's that. And then last but not least, we're playing 3 of the most important card in our extra deck, Shabber the Melodious Maestra. Now, we don't run any Maestras in the main deck, but we run the Maestras in the extra deck in the form of Shabber. So if you're making Bloom Diva or Bloom Prima, you're using Shabber as material, and hopefully after you've used Shabber's effect. So she allows us to target 3 cards in either player's graveyard and banish them during either player's turn, and she gains 200 attack for each of the cards banished, so she becomes a 3000 attack beat stick that can just crash into things like Dark Destroyers and such. And so she is a very good card, very strong card, and she allows us for a lot of disruption against decks like Blue Eyes, against decks like Monarchs that rely so much on the graveyard for setups for future plays. So that was it for the extra deck, and that was it for the deck profile. So thank you all so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it or found it helpful, please give it a like, subscribe for more Melodious content, and leave a comment down below letting me know what I can do to improve. And until next time, take care.